Hello everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel, and in this video I'm gonna be talking a little bit about watercolor paper because watercolor paper is very important and it is the reason why watercolor media is really expensive. This is one example of watercolor paper. This is what you call the art block, which is usually I'm not sure this is appearing or not, but there are like these black corners over here, and you would open it like this and you get this like extra paper just to protect the paper, and then you get your paper that you work with. You're supposed to draw on it, and then once you're done you have some sort of like here in the middle and you get like a cutter or some sort of a knife and get to cut around the edges of this. So why is watercolor paper done in such a manner? Well, this is one format. This is not really all types of watercolor paper. It's not produced in this way. There are some that is produced like sketchbooks with a coil in the side. Some others come in a really big sketches that are usually cheap, and I would cut them like this because this is the cheap type that you would use for practice. And I'm gonna talk about the cheaper types in a second at the moment. In general, most people prefer this type of style, which is glued from the four sides. Why is that? I'm gonna talk about in a second. And finally, I love this paper so much, I use it almost in everything. People who tend to want to go, I want to go on a cheaper base, you may want to go for this type because it's thick, but it does have some negative points that I'm going to talk about in a second. So watercolor paper are paper that have a high percentage of cotton in them. In this case, or this sketch, which is the Arch brand, the Arch art block or watercolor block, it has 100% amount of cotton in it. You can get all kinds of information right here, and it's 300 grams or 140 pounds cold press paper. There is cold press and there is warm press. Usually the cold press are the cheaper alternative, or from what I asked, the warm press is 3.5 higher in price than your regular cold press paper. Super expensive, in other words. And watercolor medias themselves and their paper are expensive by nature. And not every watercolor paper has 100% cotton in it. Some paper would have 50%, some others would have 40%. The less cotton you would find in the paper, the cheaper it becomes and the thinner it is. So I will go back into my practice paper that I cut. These are 90-pound paper or 185 grams. This almost have about 30% cotton in it, and I bought a huge sketch that was 50 centimeters by 40 centimeters, so that's almost half a meter sketch that had like 12 papers that I cut down into almost, I guess, B5 size. That sketch was for 25 Egyptian pounds. This, on the other hand, 20 papers, 100% cotton, 300 grams, 20 sheets for almost 70 Egyptian pounds. I'm not sure how different this is depending on what country you live in, but I guess you can compare something for 25 to 70. This is 3 times more expensive, despite that I have here over something close to 50 sheets that I cut, but it's thinner and it doesn't have much cotton. So what is the importance of cotton when it comes to watercolors? Simple. Cotton absorbs liquid, and watercolors are a liquid type of format. You want it to be absorbed. The more cotton it have, the higher and faster the absorbing rate becomes. And also it will have better colors, better results in general than normal thin paper, because overuse the water in watercolor paper, that's like my random paper over here, the paper will start to thin up. To avoid that, you need something that has a high cotton percentage, which is this. Now let's go on what is the watercolor block and why people prefer this. You see, when you use water, the paper will curl up. But once it is done like this, like it's glued from the four sides, it's forced to not curl up. You'll draw, you'll cut the paper, and then you'll take it out once it's dried, and voila! Your paper is not curled or anything. These art blocks come in a lot of sizes. I usually go for A4 because this is my scanner size, but there's bigger sizes, there are smaller sizes. I think that they can go maybe up to B5 size. There's a lot of sizes. Or maybe you prefer something that has a coil, that has that sketchbook feel. There's just a lot of things. So what if you have this kind of paper? What do? How do you get to not make it curl up? It's very simple. This is called the masking tape. The masking tape does not get affected by water. I have this interesting thing or file over here where I am gonna put my paper like this, and then I would like put my masking tape from the four sides like this, and then I will start my drawing. Once I'm done and done coloring, I will simply remove it. As you can see, the paper is not damaged whatsoever. The great thing about masking tape is that it doesn't get affected by water and it will not damage your paper as long as you take it like off very carefully. And usually, in general, once water is on it, the glue starts to lessen up, so it's easier to remove. So that's one way of how to not make your water paper sort of curl up. Because some people would get a big size. They want to go for a big canvas. So they would go for something like an A2 size, and they would, I guess you can say that they're going to duct tape it on this wooden thing. This is a wooden, I don't know what this is, but this is what you get. Well, I just duct taped it with some paper here because I don't like how the wood feel when putting your hands on it. It just dries your skin and just I don't know how to explain this, but I just don't like the feel of wood, so I duct taped some paper here. This is what people who want to draw large sizes. This is kind of like an A3 size, I believe. It's an A3 or A2 wooden piece. This is what watercolor people do who want to draw on a big canvas. They would use the masking tape and then tape it to the wooden object thing that I showed you. And this way they have the same idea of having a watercolor block. The paper will not curl up and they can draw very comfortably. Same concept goes for the cheaper type of paper. I used to do this when I'm practicing, like I want something to practice with, or maybe at times because watercolor paper has such a grainy sort of texture to it, I want something that has a smooth texture to it. And I would get this size, and I would also use masking tape, and somewhat I was able to get results close to what I get from alcohol markers. Now, of course, this is really great and handy and it's going to save you a lot of money, but this paper does not contain that amount of cotton, that like super relaxed amount that will get to absorb the water as you want. So it's going to take forever to dry. This piece took, I don't know, like 8 or 7 hours. Like half of them I was waiting until it dried because I used a lot of color layers to complete it, because when you're drawing like this anime style here, you go layers over layers over layers over layers. The easiest one was the gradient one in the background. This is basically you put in two colors together and let them to dry, and they create this kind of sort of lovely little effect. So they're not so dark in the color tone, they don't need a lot of layers, it's just one layer and you leave it. So this is one issue with the cheaper alternatives, is that they don't just have the right amount of cotton. You have have to wait until it dries. If you work if you want to have this effect, if you get to overwork it, the texture would just go bad. It will just get ruined. So this is a good alternative if you want to go in general. Like if you don't have expensive watercolors, you have the cheaper stuff, the kids stuff like this type, which is super duper cheap kids watercolor type of thing. Let's say that you're still starting watercolor and you don't want to spend a lot of money on the expensive paper. You get this. This is like for 50 Egyptian pounds. The paper here, the 125 are for like 50 Egyptian pounds. And it has like over 100 paper that you can use in anything. Well, this is 70 Egyptian pounds and it's just 20 papers. Plus, in general, watercolor paints is expensive. If this is for 50, this I got. See how small it is? For 130 Egyptian pounds. This is the student grade. We don't have any artist grade, which I'm not going to talk about, but in general, this one has the higher quality, but people, well, they will start to compare by size, so you can't compare. Like this is 15 colors, and it's very small in size, and this is 24. So some people would start watercolors and they want to try the cheaper alternative, the thing that costs less but have more, which is, by the way, is not a bad way of thinking when you're starting with watercolors. I started like that, and then I started to study up a bit more, and I understood why watercolors prices differ a lot and why the paper costs a lot. So I started with this, and I started with the paper that I showed you a second ago. It was not, or I did not have like bad results. The results are decent, but to be honest, I used my Van Gogh colors in this one. The results were still decent enough. I will mention lastly, because I know that this video is getting long, difference between what is warm press and cold press paper, because I know that there isn't a lot of mentioning towards what is the difference between cold press and warm press. Cold press paper is basically grainy paper. It's cheaper to, I guess, produce it because you're producing paper that has very close texture paper to the cotton. Because cotton, well, when you have paper that has cotton in it, it will be grainy. Cotton will have this texture that is kind of hard to draw on with pencils. The more cotton the paper have, the grainier it becomes. So this is cold press. It's cheaper to produce. Warm press, on the other hand, you get to put in more costs in production and create super smooth watercolor paper, like printer paper that has very smooth texture to it. But to do that, you need to put in more cost for production. That's why the prices are extremely different. As I mentioned, this is 70 pounds almost. The warm press, that is almost the same exact size with 20 sheets and 300 grams and 100% cotton, costs close to 300 Egyptian pounds, so 3.5 times more. Is there a difference when it comes to coloring? Yes. This or cold press paper would absorb your water in a much slower state that allows you to do a lot of textured effects, because watercolors, you can get a lot of textures depending on how amount of water you have in. Like if you have a little bit, you're going to create something called the dry effect. If you have a lot of water, you're going to go with other techniques. The dry effect is closer to manga and anime style. The wet style is closer towards the things that you would use when you're drawing landscapes. So there is just, depending on how much water you put, the textures will get different. Of course, you're going to have this lovely texture of paper that is really good, by the way, when it comes to landscapes. Warm press, on the other hand, the paper drinks the water a lot faster. And somewhat, they can provide at times a bit more vibrant images, but they're not going to have that sort of texture that watercolor paper is known for. So it's just going to be like a very smooth kind of paper. but it will have better colors than this. This was actually painted almost 2 years ago, so it started to lose some of its colors. In case you want to start and you want to try watercolors, you may want to go for the cheaper, as I mentioned, that huge sketch that I cut down into 48 paper. You may want to go for that. That's super cheap and affordable, and you can use with it these kind of paints. It's fine, absolutely fine. Want to upgrade, you want to go for the Winsor & Newton, or in this case the Van Gogh set, because I like it overall because it has more colors and it's almost the same exact price. Bigger, has its the brush right now is not in here, but it has like its mixing area or mixing palette over here, 15 colors, so you just can get a lot of more colors. You're free to choose whatever you want. I talked about watercolors and what it is. I will explain the future different techniques for watercolors. I'll end this video at this point, and I will see you in more, I guess, coloring slash drawing tutorials in the future. So make sure to subscribe and to share this video with your friends, and to always keep up. And I'll be back with another tutorial. So see you very, very soon, guys. Bye bye. Observed. I want it to be absorbed.